Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency regular meeting of February 11th, 2026. Tara, can you call the roll call, please?
Jeff Stevens. Here. Todd Kimmelshoe. Here. Bo Shepherd. Here. Dave Shaw.
Here.
Charlie Hoppin. Here. Gary Marler. Here. Mike Morris.
Here.
Chris Schmidl.
Here. Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first item is our selection of our 2026 Zabufka Chair and Vice Chair. And this is a little unusual that we don't have our existing Chair and Vice Chair in the meeting today, so I'm handling those duties. So
We need a new chair.
yeah, you will have one. Okay, so at first we would like to nominate a chair. So Sutter County is rotating into the chair position and Butte County is rotating into vice chair. So let's start with our new chairman for 2026 from Sutter County. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion for Jeff.
Jeff, I'll second Jeff.
Okay,
And not Mike.
okay, Chris motion.
Yes, Mike. I'll second.
Okay, Mike second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing none, it's unanimous. So Mr. Stevens is our new chairman. So why don't we do the nomination for our vice chair from Butte County? I'll entertain a motion.
I nominate Todd Kimmelshoe for vice chair.
Second.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have Todd Kimmelshoe as our vice chair. So congratulations, gentlemen. I'm going to turn it over to our new chairman, Mr. Stevens.
Well, what an honor. Thank you very much, board. This is my first chairmanship of any board, so bear with me as I get started here, but we're going to look for public comments, and it's members of the public will be allowed to address the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency Board of Directors on items of interest to the public that are within subject matters jurisdictions of the board. Any member of the audience who may wish to bring matters before the board that has not been placed on the agenda may do so at this time. However, state law provides that no action may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Is there anybody from the public that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, I'll close public. Consent calendars. The consent calendar groups together those items which are considered non-controversial or for which prior policy directions has been given to staff and that requires only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that the matters may be adopted in total by one motion. However, the board may, at its option or upon request of a member of the public, consider any matter separately. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we move on to informational and possible approval items. Mike?
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So today we're going to have a briefing on the Lower Feather River Side Channel project. So we have Mr. Paul Frank here. Paul is with Flow West. It's an engineering company. And Flow West is a part of our regional planning group. So we've been working with Paul for the past 2 or 3 years now. Paul's company is actually in the design process of 3 side channel projects, one of them being the Sutter County Resource Conservation District project, which this board received a briefing last year from Mike Johnston. But Paul's going to focus more on the 2 downriver projects that he's actively managing through Flow West. So with that said, Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you for the briefing.
All right, thank you, Michael. And thank you all for having me here today. Excited to talk to you about this project. Michael gave a good kind of introduction. This was kind of an outgrowth initially of work we were doing for the Feather River Region RFMP program. But this particular opportunity that we had identified as part of that project really had a very narrow habitat ecosystem focus without a flood focus. So it didn't end up going much further in that program, but separately with River Partners, we worked for a couple of years to identify grant funding, which I'll talk about in a moment, that's funding this project, and we're definitely underway. So I'm gonna walk you through a bit about the project and what we've been working on. So 4 main things. I'll give an overview and introduction to the project, briefly talk about the timeline of the project and the status of where we're at, walk through a bit about the work that we've completed to date, and then close with next steps of where the project is gonna go. Okay, so first, who's kind of generally involved? And on the right, you see a map that has kind of 3 color-coded regions that are part of the planning area of the project, with the reddish ones in the north, private properties, the bluish in the middle, Audubon Sanctuary, and the yellow toward the south is CDFW's Nelson Slough Unit Reserve. So project partners are River Partners, who is the grantee. I'll talk about the grants on the next slide. Flow West, my firm, we're a consultant doing engineering, design, hydraulics, permitting, et cetera. Yurok Construction Corporation will be the builder for at least the first phase. It's likely to be constructed in phases. Audubon Society, as I mentioned, is a landowner, Garden Highway Mutual Company and other private landowners. CDFW, owning land in the south. Sabufka, the levee and flood control manager in the area, and Levee District 1, who's the levee maintainer. So about the funding. So initially, well, I'll do the second funding at the bottom because that's what we got first. Bureau of Reclamation through their Central Valley Project Improvement Act, CVPIA, provided funding of $10 million for a period from about 2025 to 2028 with a possible extension, we'll see. And that's funding project planning on the entire footprint. By planning, I mean kind of conceiving of what could be possible, doing outreach with landowners, seeing what could be advanced. And then design, permitting, and construction of a side channel project on some portion of the footprint that comes out of that planning exercise and goes forward. And that could be some combination of actions on the Audubon parcel, which is where we've been focusing mostly, in some of the private parcels potentially, and or down on the CDFW property. And in the aftermath, if the planning portion of the work finds that we can implement something throughout, then it will be constructed in phases. Subsequent to that reclamation grant, we also got a grant from Fish and Wildlife Service for a project that was called the Nelson Slough Feasibility Study, which was a pointed feasibility study on what could be done on CDFW's lands in the yellow area. And that was a $250,000 grant that work was completed in 2025. And that funded alternatives development and evaluation only on the CDFW lands in yellow. Michael mentioned a couple projects, so I wanted to quickly differentiate because I think there are 2 projects being called the Lower Feather River Side Channel Project right now. One spearheaded by the Sutter County RCD. Very tiny up there in purple. So I have the arrow pointing out where that one is. That's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is the River Partners one in orange that you've already seen, that footprint down below. Obviously, they're very different size scales when you put them together like this, but they're both important projects for creating salmon habitat in the Lower Feather River corridor. And Flow West is actually working on the designs of both, although, as I said today, I'm focusing on the orange one with River Partners. So a little about kind of why this project is important and the basis for it. You don't have to worry about that paragraph on top, but suffice it to say at the bottom, CVPIA, Central Valley Project Improvement Act, has put forth near-term restoration strategies, or NTRS, actions for regaining salmon populations in the Central Valley. And one of the priority actions that came out of CVPIA number 8 is action on the Lower Feather River and doing juvenile salmon habitat restoration below the confluence of the Yuba. So this is a priority area, and for river partners, it's part of a coordinated strategy where they're already doing work in yellow at the Goose Club and have done work in blue on Dos Rios Norte, and this Nelson Slough unit in pink, and the rest of our planning area in green is completely contiguous. So if projects were implemented throughout, there would be this very long corridor that helps juvenile salmon as they're making their way out downstream, able to find the habitat that they need. Little more about the project basis for this specific project. As you probably know, declining salmon populations need shallow, slow-moving floodplain areas for the juveniles to feed and grow, and those are in short supply. The Feather River corridor, particularly in the area that we're looking at, already contains numerous low-lying and wet areas that could support salmon rearing. These include remnant channels, levee borrow pit or channel, because it's very linear in this area, and other features like that. They're often or even always wetted with groundwater, but there's a lack of connectivity to the Feather River itself and a lack of frequent enough flow through. So these are kind of disconnected areas, and the pictures here show many of them, and they're kind of in some cases overgrown with things like primrose and hyacinth because they're stagnant. They can be pretty deep. This is one of our folks out there doing some surveying work in one of these depressed areas in the floodplain of the Feather River on the west side, where our project planning is happening. So the goal of the project is to help expand some of those areas to have more frequent flow through them and better connections to the Feather River so that the salmon can get in and out of them as waters come up and recede. So kind of a summary of the goals and possible benefits of the project. We're looking to restore river processes and connectivity to the Feather River floodplain, increase the amount of suitable rearing habitat for juvenile salmon, increase early successional riparian habitat for native wildlife of all kinds in the corridor. The plan is to replant all disturbed areas after channels are deepened or created to connect to the river, replant them with native vegetation. And this is something that River Partners excels at, is an active restoration strategy that can kind of jumpstart creation of native dominated vegetation and help keep out invasive vegetation species that are not desirable in the floodplain. We're looking to remove or address, I'll say, human-created impediments to fish passage between the Feather River and the lower Sutter bypass. An example of that we've been looking at in that Nelson Slough feasibility study is the rock weir that stretches across the Nelson Slough area right where it hits the Sutter bypass, and that can be a barrier to fish getting back and forth. So part of our feasibility study was looking at, could we put a notch or somehow make a passageway through? And then we want to engineer the project for resilience and lack of need for long-term significant maintenance. Habitat dynamism is a benefit. Habitats that can kind of adapt as floodwaters come and go and rework the floodplain and evolve over time. And then we want to minimize higher velocities, erosion potential, with a goal of the project to have no impacts at all to the flood system as it currently stands. And I'll talk a little more about that later when I show some hydraulics that we've been working on for the project. Okay, a little bit quickly about timeline and status. As I said earlier, the Nelson Slough feasibility study we completed in 2025, specific to the CDFW parcel. Throughout 2025, we were doing data collection, development of a hydraulic model for the project. We began alternatives outreach and preliminary design. That's continuing into this year. Permitting will take place in 26 and 27. Engineering design, we're currently embroiled in and will probably go into next year. And then construction of a first phase, we anticipate in something like 2028. All right, so now I'll run through kind of the work that we've completed to date with some examples of more specifics of what the project would look like. As I said, we've completed the Nelson Slough feasibility study. We did a new survey of both topography and bathymetry in the planning area. You can kind of see an elevation model of that on the right. We used that to develop a new hydraulic computer model of this section of the Feather River and a little bit of the Sutter bypass. We've developed alternatives for each of the three kind of zones and have started evaluating them. That's still ongoing. We've been conducting stakeholder and technical advisory committee, which included Sabufka outreach on the project and its alternatives and what we're proposing. We've developed conceptual designs, and we've done both hydraulics and habitat suitability evaluations. The juvenile salmon need very specific ranges of depths and velocities for their growth, and so identifying and quantifying how many acres of that type of suitable habitat will create is part of what we need to do to satisfy grant requirements. So first, a bit about the project hydrology and what kind of flows in the Feather River the project is really meant to target or create these interactions. So we're definitely looking at low flows, not flood flows, because we want flows that are happening every year, and in some cases every year for weeks at a time when the juvenile salmon need this habitat. So we've generally looked at kind of what flows are occurring for at least a 2 to 6 week duration each year in January to March. And that looks like 3,000 to 25,000 cubic feet per second in the Feather River. That's a pretty low flow. We want to create newly inundated or newly flow through floodplain areas at those flows. And so we have to do some excavations to do that. When we look at flood peaks, for example, an annual flood peak or a 10-year event, not even a 100-year event, these are too infrequent for salmon habitat. So our goal there is have the project not affect the way the corridor performs when those flows are coming through, and don't create any new stresses on the levee. Okay, so now I'll walk through briefly, because there's a lot of detail in here that might be hard to pick out in a brief look at a slide, but we've focused primarily on the Audubon parcel in the middle, because they were the earliest landowner to express a willingness and interest in this as we were working on getting our funding. So the sort of what we call the Barrow Channel, which is a depression just off the toe of the levee that parallels the levee virtually all the way down through this area. That's kind of the primary focus, is creating the conditions we want in that Barrow Channel and creating more connections out to the river from it. So do I have a pointer on this? Ooh, apparently not. Can we go back one? Am I able to do that with this? I only have like 3 buttons. And does this have a... Ah, that's fancy. Okay. Yeah, this is the right slide. Actually, one more back. Thank you. Okay, so this is the Audubon parcel. What I've been describing as the Barrow Channel is this kind of a feature along here. So we're looking to deepen that and widen it a little bit to the east. And then also in Sandspit Slough, which is an existing kind of remnant channel in the floodplain, expand that one and create some higher and lower flow interconnected channels between the Feather River and that Barrow Channel. And then down at the CDFW Nelson Slough unit, it's somewhat similar where that kind of levee borrow channel exists with some deepening that we would do and expansion to the east. And then creating in an existing remnant channel depression a much deeper connection that brings water from the Feather River up toward this rock weir where we would put a notch that allows the fish to get over easier into the Sutter bypass where there's already a lot of existing habitat for them. We've done a lot less, let's say, on the parcels to the north, the privately owned ones, which is why I don't have figures of those yet today, but we're working on that this year. So sort of just to give you a sense of what this looks like, I have like a rough cross section. If you're looking here, looking downstream, and your western levee is up here, and its toe is down here, this depression is that borrow pit that I'm talking about. And so what we're proposing to do is off of the toe, not into the toe, cutting deeper and creating kind of a ledge to the east, and then meeting up with existing terrain. And so by digging down and creating kind of this terrace here, we have the ability to create the depths and velocities that the fish need at multiple flow events in that depressed area. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the hydraulics analysis we've done and kind of show you what preliminary results we have and what changes to expect in the river itself. It's not very much. So first you're gonna see a series of 3 slides looking at 3 different flow events. First, we're starting with what I'm calling an annual event. So sort of on a statistical average, the largest event you'd see in a given year. And in each of these on the left, we're looking at water elevation changes, and on the right, velocity changes. And so these are differences from our simulations of the current existing condition. So let's start with the water elevation change on the left here. So our legend here shows that positive changes in water surface elevation, or if the project were to raise the water surface, it's blue. If it were to lower the water surface elevation, it's pinkish to red. And the deepest blue is 2-foot raise, and the deepest red is 2-foot lowering. And what you can basically see is throughout the corridor, our hydraulic simulations show that the project would actually just barely lower the water surfaces in the Feather River at that annual event. It's this kind of very light pink. And because it's so light, I've called out some locations with actual changes numerically. So up here, 5-inch drop. Down closer to the Sutter bypass, 6-inch drop is what we're predicting. And then these sort of plus 1.2 foot and plus 4 inches, these are looking out at that borrow channel at what kind of elevation raises we would see there as we put more water in. And then looking at velocities, in this color map, dark blue means no change at all. And then moving towards warmer colors like red would be increases in velocity. Moving down towards green would be decreases in velocity. And so out in the Feather River channel itself, there's zero change because the changes are so minimal to the floodplain. But in the floodplain channels themselves, at this annual flow, we see increases of about 1 to 2.5 feet per second. That's literally from zero because in the existing condition, the water is stagnant there. So these are still very slow velocities. And I wanted to point out in this kind of zoom in over here of this area over here that even though spatially here it looks like it's right up against the levee, the actual distance between the highest increases in velocity and the toe of the levee is 100 to 200 feet. And it's all vegetated with riparian trees in between that. So this is not butting right up against the levee toe. I want to make that clear. Okay, so now that you've wrapped your heads around that, this is the corresponding figure for a 10-year return interval flow. So a flood peak you'd expect on average every 10 years. And similarly, we see no change in the entire river corridor, including the floodplain. And this color represents a 4-inch drop in predicted water surface elevation. For velocities, again, in these channels that we create or deepen, we see some marginal velocity increases, around a foot per second or so, but very minimal. And you can see in this blow up over here that those are in the middle of the channel, and there's still functionally a dark blue no change of velocity where it touches the levee. Yeah, got a question? Great question. It is, I believe, approximately, it's like 80, 90,000 CFS, I believe. Yeah. And then for the 100-year, which is close to 400,000 CFS, it's a very big flow. It's more of the same, although slightly diminished on the velocities in particular. But again, we predict about a 4-inch drop in water surface. And, let's say between fractions of a foot per second and 2 feet per second increases out in the areas where we've excavated channels. So very minimal predicted changes to the floodway. Really only out in the floodplain where we do our work and not in the actual river corridor itself. This slide just gets at our most recent work looking at the Audubon Reserve, where we have kind of a map of our proposed channel features over here. And the bar charts are sort of showing above and below in different regions our projections of how many new acres of suitable salmon rearing habitat there would be. And apologies, this is actually for all 3 regions of the project, the private parcels up in the north, the Audubon in the middle, and the CDFW in the south. So the numbers are kind of irrelevant for today's purposes, but just showing that the lower or proposed condition results in significant increases in suitable habitat for these salmon during their rearing season. I think that brings me to basically the end. Next steps during 2026, we're working, accidentally pushed the button, would you mind bringing me back one? Thank you. 2026, we're working on continued design and refinement of the designs, continued ongoing stakeholder outreach, 30 and 60% designs on as many of the parcels as we can do, and moving into permitting, targeting, as I said, a first phase of construction, probably on the Audubon parcel in 2028.
You get all this built with a grant, and then going forward, who maintains this channel you're going to create?
The channel's being designed such that it shouldn't need ongoing maintenance, that it will evolve with.
Sand is not going to need any ongoing maintenance in flood time?
No. River Partners as the sort of project owner and working with landowners whose land it's on may come to some agreement of what level of interaction they might have to do that. But the goal is that we're building habitats that naturally will evolve with different years' flooding patterns, and that even with some degree, let's say, of sedimentation over time, these side channels are designed to evolve. Natural ones that provide this habitat are formed, fill in with sediment, disappear, return over the long term, and we're looking for the same type of evolution of a habitat that we create, because the goal is not to have people out there needing to constantly re-excavate these channels over time. So that's.
It'll be like the channel down on the Nelson Slough part that doesn't get maintained and has beaver dams and floats them, so the drain pipes we put underneath the levee to drain the area that's adjacent to it can't flow because nothing's been done to it by Fish and Wildlife for years. It just evolved into a beaver dam, basically.
Well, in a case like Gotcha. Well, those types of problems with infrastructure would obviously need to be maintained, but I believe at the end of the day, that's part of our stakeholder outreach is making sure that landowners understand what type of risks like that there are, and if they're willing to take on, as a partnership with the project, that type of maintenance on those types of infrastructure facilities, that could be necessary.
Thank you. Let's turn it over to the public first and see if there's any public comment.
Sure, thank you.
Any public comment? Okay, let's bring it back to the board then.
Are you concerned with any too much vegetation overgrowth would impede the migration of these small salmon?
We're hoping actually that by creating more frequent flow through these channels, annual processes of water moving through will prevent some of that, particularly like primrose and hyacinth type floating vegetation that currently clogs them up. So with the project, that should get better. And by doing the work and removing undesired vegetation and replanting with appropriate native vegetation, the goal is to minimize that concern and make it better than what's currently out there now.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add a little bit too, excuse me. When Paul's team has final designs and they're going to have to go through a Central Valley Flood Protection Board permitting process for the projects, our team, the Sabufka team, and we'll be working closely with Levy District 1 to ensure that whatever they're proposing does not have, impacts to our flood control system. And what Paul was talking about, excavating fairly close to the levee toe or in close proximity, we would be looking at evaluating, slope stability analysis, erosion issues, and even under seepage. So we would be looking at all of those type of potential deficiencies to ensure that this project does not cause anything like that. So I just wanted the board to be aware that we will be working closely with Paul's team as this project moves forward.
Any other board comment? I've got a couple questions, Paul. How much in phase one, what's the distance approximately? Phase two, the distance of the projects if we go forward?
That's a difficult one to answer because we're still at a point where we don't know how much would get constructed in phase one, but the entire footprint is something like 5 miles.
Okay.
And so if I could throw out, our initial expectation was that a phase one might look like just the Audubon partial, which is about, I believe, maybe a little less than 2 miles. But that assumption was based on not knowing how involved CDFW would want to be, and now we're at a much different place with CDFW after completing that feasibility study. So there's a possibility phase two includes that as well. So, I would say, to give you a ballpark, it's probably somewhere between 1.5 and 3 miles, maybe something like that.
Okay, thank you. And the other question is, has there been any research or any study done on how fast the fish will come back, or will we just see a slow increase, or does it come back pretty fast, or?
Definitely people study the life cycles of these fish and how restoration projects like this change it. And in fact, as part of the grant and the construction, there will be a monitoring of actually observing before and after the populations of fish that get in there. But the reality is that these species are, they're hatching new cohorts every year. So as soon as it's built, they'll be there coming from upstream to swim in there. So it would be very fast that fish would start rearing in this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Any more? Michael knows how to get to me, and we're happy to answer any more questions you all have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, next, we're going to have the financial report from Sean.
Good afternoon. So this report covers through December, financials through the end of December of 2025. We ended with a working capital of about $15.35 million. Estimated to date is about $15.8 million. Revenue, we're still accounting for 24-25 until next month. So the operating revenue, just reiteration from last presentation, is for 24-25 was a little over $1 million. Zero received to date for our operating fund currently for the current fiscal year. Capital revenues, though, about for the current fiscal year, we've received about $3.7 million, and we've got about $5.5 million pending. The difference in pending to what we've received, about $2.3 million, is entirely just grant reimbursements that we're just waiting on. So estimated expenditures for 24-25 still remain about $8.3 million, and currently for the current fiscal year, it's about $8.4 million through December 31st. We have a little bit of a breakdown here. A majority of the expenses to date have been for the FURLIP project, the construction project. Our debt service payment is coming up for a combined, for April, it's about a combined $1.1 million that we're planning to make. Oop. Just that, and there, can you go back? Thanks, perfect. So just going forward, continue activities. We some closeout on a few grants. Our FMPRA grant was closed officially on December 31st. Our CDFW, we have a CDFW grant that's closing out in middle of March. And then just administration of ongoing grants. And then next month, we'll present the audit. Continuing disclosure report on our debt service was also due in March. We have an assessment roll for 26-27. Kickoff meeting with advisors on that at the end of this month. And then just our budget process. We have preliminary budget that's probably set for May, and a finalized version of that in June. So I just open up for any questions.
Any questions from the public? Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you. Mike, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have now our last presentation of the day. This is mine. It's the program project update. Let's pull that up here. What I want to do, I like to, every year at the beginning of the year, is to look back and talk about our successes from last year, and then look forward to, what we're trying to achieve in this coming year. So for 2025 successes, the highlights that I pulled out for the year were, we awarded our construction contract for the Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project, and we broke ground in May, and we started season 1 last year, and we'll be proceeding into season 2 this coming year. We advanced the Sutter Bypass levee repair project, so we are getting very close to 100% set of bid documents for that project, and I'll talk about that later. We completed the Army Corps levee safety inspection for City of Orrville. And that was big because we partnered closely with DWR to get the Army Corps to come in and do that one-time free, no-cost levee safety inspection. So that was a real success for the City of Orrville. We advanced design, secured new funding agreement with the Wildlife Conservation Board for almost $32 million for the Orrville Wildlife Area Robinson's Riffle River Restoration Project. So we were awarded that in November last year, Wildlife Conservation Board, so we're very excited about receiving that grant and advancing that project into construction, and we'll talk about that also. Also, we completed our designs for the OWA Rec Improvements Project, and we're, excuse me, getting close to advancing into construction on that project. And then lastly, we had a successful bond refunding where we're saving the agency approximately $4.3 million as we were able to reduce our restructure our bond debt and have that substantial cost savings to the agency. And for 2026, so looking ahead this year, we want to finish up our Tudor flood risk reduction project. We want to close out our Feather River West Levee Project 1. So that's where, we're transferring all the real estate rights over to the state. We're very close to finalizing that process now. We're finalizing our environmental mitigations for the project. And we're very close to closing out Feather River West Levee Project 1. We're also looking to complete our permitting and design of Sutter Bypass East Levee repair. And I put in a little question mark here, secure construction funding. So I'll talk about that on another slide. We were looking forward to beginning construction on the Thermalito After Bay Rec project. So that's what we're pushing forward for this year. And completing our permitting and design for Robinson's Riffle. And we anticipate going out to bid later this year and awarding a contract and getting into construction in 2027. So that's what we're advancing. And then these last two items are more just ongoing advancement of the Orville levee repair project, looking for future funding sources to assist the city of Orville. And then also advancing our Sutter County FEMA remapping process. We're, I think, in year 2, and it probably is looking like another year or so before we complete that process. And with the uncertainties of the FEMA administration right now, we're not sure exactly where that's going to go and what that timeline will look like. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me get into Tudor Flood Risk Reduction Project. I talked about that. We're entering phase or year 2 of our construction. Last year we completed all the levee improvements, the cutoff wall construction. This year our contractor's coming back and putting in the 2 pipes that need to be installed. We anticipate beginning construction in probably early May. We might be out there a little sooner doing some dewatering work and getting ready for being able to degrade the levee, but obviously we won't allow the contractor to proceed until it's safe to do so. So that'll all depend on how the rest of the flood season goes. Next slide, please. Okay, Sutter Bypass East levee repairs. We received our Army Corps comments on our 90% design, so our team is addressing those now, and we'll be advancing towards 100% submittal package in the spring, and then getting that process ready to when we find construction funds going out to bid on that project. So what we're doing right now, we're working closely with Cal OES and their consultant to put in a hazard mitigation grant application to FEMA. As the board's aware, we were successful in the BRIC grant, but that has been pulled away by the Trump administration. So we're pivoting over to HMGP. So we're getting close to finalizing that application, and Cal OES will be submitting that on ours and the DWR's behalf to FEMA in the spring. We're also closely coordinating with Calpine on their future expansion to their Sutter Energy facility and possible funding for advancing our repairs to the Sutter Bypass. On City of Orville levee repair, the Army Corps gave a presentation to the City Council on February 3rd, and Chris and I were in attendance there. The City Council, asked a lot of good questions to the Corps. I think that study overall was well received, and there were some good action items, recommendations in that report that will be helping the city advance this coming year. We're also going to work closely with Senator Daly and Assemblyman Gallagher, who is now potentially moving on to Congress, to look for state funding to help the city. Lastly, on this slide, working closely with the Army Corps to close out the Tudor the Cypress project and our Sutter Basin project overall. The Corps is completing the IDR, which is the Integral Determination Report. That's being routed for signatures now. So that has gone through the process. They approved all of our improvements. They found them integral to the federal project, so that's a good thing. So they're reviewing all of our credit packages now to give us the full credit for all our work. Next slide, please. Let's see. Oh, the Robinson's Riffle project. Like I said, we're advancing designs. We should be getting 100% package late spring or so, finalizing that process this year and hopefully going out to bid for construction in 2027. We were awarded the almost $32 million with WCB, so very excited there to advance that project into construction. And that one's also similar to what Paul was talking about earlier. We're creating side channels up in the Oroville wildlife area, improving the actual riverbed for migrating and spawning salmon. So all of these projects are sort of interrelated to help the salmon species thrive in the Feather River. Our Thermalito Afterbay boat ramp and campground project, we are essentially completed all the plans. We went out to bid. We received a successful bid. We'll look into award contract next month. We're working closely with DWR on the FERC approvals we need for the project, and we're finalizing all the other permits through the regulatory agencies and the Army Corps to get into construction this year. And then the last two bullets are all the side channel projects we just talked about, so I won't go over that again. Next slide, please. Weather Watch. So this is our annual or our monthly slide to talk about what's going on in the weather. We had a really dry January. We started off great, right after Christmas, tons of rain, snow, and then the spigot shut off. So right now, obviously there's no concerns out there, but we're starting to get a little bit of rain now, and we're going to have a couple of weeks, I think, of rain, which is very positive and hopefully results in some more snowpack. But overall, everything is looking good, and we'll just keep talking about this as we work our way through flood season. Next slide. Okay, upcoming meetings. So another Army Corps levee inspection took place in January. So the Corps every 5 years does their risk assessments and periodic inspections of levees throughout the federal system. And ours was done this January. So we participated all along the Feather River and along the Sutter Bypass East Levee. It was like a 2 to 3 day field work, and then 2 to 3 days of in-office analysis, and the Corps is going to follow that up next week with some additional meetings that we'll be participating in, just to ensure that they are evaluating our system properly and counting for all the improvements that we've made. And so it's a really good process that we're partnering with the Army Corps on. On next week, Congressman Thompson is going to be in town next Tuesday, the 17th, and the meeting is starting at the Calpine facility. So I'll be participating in that meeting as well as some of our electeds to introduce Congressman Thompson to what's going on in this region specific to the Calpine and the carbon capture project that they want to do, and then our levee improvements that we're looking to advance along the Sutter Bypass East Levee. And then I believe the plan is to also take him out, depending on the weather, out to the Feather River and show him recently completed improvements. So should be a good meet and greet meeting next week. We have our next board meeting on the 11th of next month. And I also wanted to mention, Drew just gave me this information. Tonight at 5:30, the Yuba Water Agency is putting on the day the levee broke video, I believe, and that's going to be at the Lee Burroughs Center for the Arts in Marysville. So if anybody's interested in attending that, you can stop by and get the address from me. And then lastly, right after this meeting, we're having our Feather River West Levy Financing Authority meeting. And that'll be the first one of the year for that agency as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back to you and see if there's any questions.
Well, thank you, Mike. Is there any other questions from the board or public? Hearing none, I'm ready to close the meeting. We want to, since we haven't had a meeting recently, we want to close in the honor of Doug Lamalfa. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.